So yesterday, a subscriber tagged me on a short on Instagram, and I immediately went and watched this short. I don't know why, but I did. I went and looked at it, and I immediately was disgusted by what I was hearing. And in this video, we are going to talk about what was discussed in this podcast. Podcast is called Brotherly Love Podcast. And here's just a taste of what I heard in the first little bit.
I went to the hotel room, which I can't believe they would send me to, of a very prominent Oscar award-winning director who showed up in his robe, asked me to take my clothes off, and said he needed to take Polaroids of me.
So you may not recognize who that is, because I honestly didn't and had to go figure out who he was. But this is Matthew Lawrence. Matthew Lawrence is, I think, in his 40s right now, but he is a child actor from like the mid 80s. This guy was on Dynasty. He did Miss Doubtfire with Robin Williams. He's been in a lot of movies and TV shows, and he has this podcast with his brothers. Podcast is called Brotherly Love. I watched the short on Instagram, and then I immediately went and watched the full podcast because I had to hear more about what he was saying. Now, the part that I haven't told you was that this proposition, this solicitation that came to Matthew Lawrence actually came from a director that does movies for Marvel. That is the part that really captured my attention. And as I said, I was absolutely disgusted. The idea that people are still taking advantage of people, or at least trying to take advantage of people in this day and age, is absolutely disgusting to me. What I don't know, and there's a lot that I don't know about this, is I don't know when this occurred, how long ago this was, but even setting those things aside, I am disgusted. I can't even come up with a better word to describe how I feel about somebody in a position of power attempting to take advantage of someone else. And it doesn't matter whether it's a guy or a girl, a man or a woman. I find it just reprehensible that somebody would actually do this. And I listened to this entire podcast, and unfortunately it was only this one small segment in which Matthew spoke about this. But let me play another part of this for you.
There's been many times in my life where I've been propositioned to get a huge role. I've lost my agency because I went to the hotel room, which I can't believe they would send me to, of a very prominent Oscar award-winning director who showed up in his robe, asked me to take my clothes off, and said he needed to take Polaroids of me, and that if I did X, Y, and Z, I would be the next Marvel character.
There is so much in that. The company that represented him, the agency that represented him, sent him to this hotel room of this director. They sent him there, and they had to know what was going to happen. They had to know. And the fact that this guy has morals and a standard for himself and rejected this idea, they then essentially retaliated against him by firing him as a client. That is crazy. It is crazy to me. And Matthew and his brothers go on in other parts of this to discuss how this isn't something that was unique to him. This is something that happens fairly often. He actually spoke about the fact that many of his male friends and female friends in the industry have had similar encounters, if you will, with directors, with producers that have attempted to do this kind of stuff. And it is sad. It is sad that this still happens to people. He even spoke a little bit about Terry Crews and how Terry Crews, had some things happen to him. He spoke out against it, and people made fun of him for speaking out and for saying, "Hey, this is crazy. This is happening to people. This is ungood." People actually came down on Terry Crews as a result. And Terry Crews' situation is not an isolated thing. It seems like this is something that just happens on an ongoing basis.
Well, not a lot of guys, in my opinion, have come out and talked about this in the industry.
Yes,
there is also this same situation. Now, granted, I'd say it's probably a third of what women go through, the amount of men. But
Yeah, who
men
knows
go
another?
through this as well, whether it's another woman or another man in power.
So in a part of this, he spoke about the fact that it's like a four-way street. And I think what he's alluding to there is that it is women in positions of power doing it to other women in positions of power doing it to men, and then a man in a position of power doing it to women and other men. I think that's what he means by that four-way type of thing. Doesn't matter how it's done. It's all disgusting. It's all wrong. And it gives me just a little bit of pause. Now, in other parts of this thing, he does highlight the fact that he knows some of the guys that went on to get roles in Marvel movies, and he doesn't know what they did or didn't do to actually get those roles. But again, the fact that this stuff happens and could have happened to some of these people, it just doesn't sit well with me. I saw this clip. I had to comment on it. I don't know. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram, Regie Collects. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yo. Should you practice art? Or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master. The one that's more than a rapper. The one that's an educator. The one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts. He's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan. Straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations. Synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting. Indian style in the gold.